All right, today we're going to learn two more ways to solve quadratic equations. I put the title as the Quadratic Formula, but we're going to start by reviewing how to solve one graphically, which after all the work we did in our last section, this should be pretty easy for you. We're just going to be finding X-intercepts. So let's just do one real quick, just to make sure that everybody's straight on that. Let's say that I have some quadratic equation, y equals 16 minus x minus 7, the quantity squared, some junk like that. It is a quadratic because it's going to be squared. All right? We are going to use the TI-84, it's actually the TI-84 plus, to A, graph it, B, find the X-intercepts, and then C, you're supposed to solve algebraically and compare to see if we got the right answer. Okay? So let's go to the graphing calculator and let's enter the function 16 minus the quantity x minus 7, the quantity squared. And if you have forgotten, we can get to the standard window by pressing Zoom Standard. Now, it looks to me like it's upside down. And it also looks to me like we can't see all of it. So we need to adjust our window a little bit. I need to turn, I have my derivative function on from calculus. Let me turn this thing off so we don't get confused here. There we go. Go back to the graph. I can't see all of the quadratic, so I need to adjust my window more to the right, it looks like. So I'm going to say my x minimum could be -2, and my x maximum, maybe I'll make it 15, and use that. And maybe I can see, yeah, right. Now I can see what I need to see. All right. Technically, I need to go up maybe a little bit. That's maybe being picky, but -5 to, we'll say 18. See if that shows me all of the parabola. There we go. So there's the parabola. It is upside down. All right. And what we want to do is we want to use the graphing calculator to find the x-intercepts. Now, notice something. This is very, very important. What we've done the last 3 days, all of those x equals whatever, those are these 2 points right here. Okay, when we have set the quadratic equal to 0 and solved it, it has been giving us these 2 places on the graph where it crosses the x-axis. Think about that for a second. If I set some quadratic, whatever it is, equal to 0, I'm asking, when is this quadratic equation equal to 0? Well, look at these 2 points right here. What are the y values there? What's the y value right here at this point? 0. What's the y value here? 0. Okay? So when we set this thing equal to 0, we're saying, when is this function equal to 0? Right? And so we can use the graphing calculator to find those. And in case you need to be refreshed on that, let's do one of these. What we do is we go to Second, Trace, and I select 0. And it always comes up and says, where's the left cursor? Somewhere to the left of that 0. I'm to the left of it now. Then it asks for a right bound, so you move it to the right of that 0 or intercept, and you hit enter. And then it asks you to guess, and you hit enter again. And there is my first 0 at x equals 3. Okay? So once you have that 0, okay, so this one right here we found out is x equals 3. And then you have to do the same thing for the other 0. All right, so I'll just go ahead and finish this out here. I'll press second trace again, select finding a 0, and I need to move it over. This thing is slow sometimes, be patient with me. Somewhere to the left of it, hit enter. Move it somewhere to the right of it, hit enter. Hit enter again. That 0 is at 11. Okay? So this point here, this solution is x equals 11. Now it asks you to solve algebraically and compare. If I wanted to solve this algebraically, then I would set this equal to 0 and solve it algebraically. Now, you would have to be very cautious on this problem because of the distributive property. This says x minus 7 the quantity squared, which means I have 16 minus the quantity x squared minus 14x plus 49 equals 0. So you have to be cautious on this problem and take a negative through. So when I take a negative through, I have 16 minus x squared plus 14x minus 49 equals 0. All right? So I'm not going to finish solving this one because after this point, you would just try to factor it, and it would factor. Okay? Let's move on to the quadratic formula. What you would do, just kind of wrapping up here, is you would finish solving these things and make sure that you get x equals 3 and make sure that you get x equals 11. Okay? And you should. So the quadratic formula is a way to solve a quadratic equation that won't factor. It's a way to do it analytically or algebraically, if you will. So the quadratic formula says for ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That is the quadratic formula. And yes, you will use it enough. You will need to get it memorized. But if you start every problem with it that way, you'll have it memorized in no time. Okay? Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, this formula has a nice little feature to it, and it's called the discriminant. Come on, discriminant. The discriminant is the part under the radical, the b squared minus 4ac. That's called the discriminant. And here's the nice thing about the discriminant. If we just do that little calculation, it will tell us how many solutions we have. Okay? There's 3 possibilities. The first possibility is if the discriminant, if positive, then there are 2 solutions. Okay? If it's equal to 0, there's 1 solution. And if the discriminant is negative, there are no solutions. So the discriminant is kind of a little shortcut for us in that it tells us how many solutions we're going to have. Let's get to an example here and see how we use this quadratic formula. We're just going to solve using, and I'm just going to put QF for the quadratic formula. Let's say that we have x squared plus 2x minus 35 equals 0. And I want to solve that using the quadratic formula. Well, first thing we do is we write it down. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. The first piece of advice I need to give you is to be careful with your signs and your algebra, because if you don't take care of a sign the right way, it will mess up the whole problem. So this says negative b. Doesn't that mean the opposite of whatever the b term is? So what's the opposite of positive 2? So I will go ahead and put negative 2 here, plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times the a term, which is 1, times the c term, which is negative 35, all over 2 times the a term, which is 1. From here on out, it's simplifying a radical. So now I have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, this is going to be 4, the discriminant is going to be 4 plus 140. So that discriminant is going to be 144. This whole thing is over 2. So let me ask you a question. How many solutions do I have? I'm going to have 2 solutions because the discriminant is positive. The square root of 144 is 12, isn't it? So this would simplify to negative 2 plus or minus 12 over 2. So how do I finish that up? Well, I do negative 2 plus 12 over 2. That's one of my solutions. I'll call that x1. So that's going to be what? 10 over 2. That's going to be 5. X is 5. And then I do, for my second solution, I do negative 2 minus 12 over 2. So that's going to be negative 14 over 2, which is negative 7. Okay, so the quadratic formula is basically plug and chug, but you got to be careful with your signs and so forth. Obviously, they might give something to you like this. 5x equals 2x squared plus 6, and say use the quadratic formula. But I can't start yet, can I? It's not in the right form. The first thing I need to do is move the 5x over. So now I have 0 equals 2x squared minus 5x plus 6. Okay? Using the quadratic formula, maybe we won't finish this one. Let's see what happens with the discriminant at least. All over 2a. X equals the opposite of b, so that's positive 5, plus or minus the square root of 25, because that's b squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a. Well, the discriminant is going to be 25 minus 48. A light bulb should be going off. Light bulb, light bulb. The discriminant is negative 23. If you get that far, you're done. There's no solution to that quadratic equation. Okay, if you recognize that that discriminant is negative. All right? And the only other thing that I want to point out is that they might give you some problems where they say solve using any convenient method. And they'll give you a quadratic equation, x squared plus 3x minus 40 equals 0. Well, when they say that, haven't we learned 5 methods now to solve them? Right? We've learned factoring. We've learned extracting. We've learned completing the square. Okay, I'm just abbreviating because we're running out of time. We've learned graphically. And we've learned the quadratic formula. When they say solve using any convenient method, pick one. And if I were you, I'd pick the quickest one. I think this one, the quickest one, is probably factoring because it factors real easy. Okay, so that's what you're going to see in homework tonight, and we'll stop there.